Hello and welcome back to the VIP-Bet DFS Soccer Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin DeVries. Joining me as always in that box right there is my good friend and partner in crime, Rob Langevin. Now, Rob, when we were divvying up the matches that we were going to talk about on today's show, we slowly came to realize there are very few exciting quote-unquote matches. Only one of the top six in this slate. That's going to be Tottenham, who are sixth. So just barely sneaking into that top six. You have Leicester as well, but you also have a lot of kind of interesting lower class teams. What do you think we're going to see, and what a lot of people are probably thinking will be some of these more boring matches, like Bournemouth, Crystal Palace, or Huddersfield versus Brighton?
Yeah, the way this slate is constructed, everybody knows, and the valuable commodities that are on Spurs, and you can tell by the pricing of them that they are the elite of the elite this week. And the teams that are on the slate compared to Spurs are reflective of why Harry Kane is where he is, Eriksen is where he is. This slate is not for the people who don't know what they're doing. This is like going to a flea market and trying to buy a Porsche. It's not going to happen. Basically, you're looking for bargains where bargains all exist, and you basically have to pick the right options out. I mean, they are there. You know, there's guys replacing injury guys that are coming in. Cough, cough, Goodmunson. I know I'm probably stealing your spotlight because that's one of your games. But, you know, that's one of the more interesting names on this slate because, you know, Robbie Brady is the end-all, be-all for Burnley, and in a DFS format, he does a ton of things that will collectively score you positively. So, from that standpoint, the pricing of guys is a little wonky. I'm going to get into that when I get into the Leicester Newcastle because by the time I get down to there, the pot will probably boil over with some of the defensive pricing.
Yeah.
But I digress. But listen, everybody knows Spurs. Some people know Watford, but everybody else on this slate is kind of like a beggars can't be choosers kind of thing. But that's where the bargains are, and that's where differentials, especially for DFS, pay off and end up in your bank account.
Yeah, I agree with you. This week is pretty much hard mode. If you're a little bit more casual of a player, this is not the week to play multi lineups. You're gonna need some deep cuts to do well this week. So we'll just jump straight into it then. I'll lead in here with Watford versus Burnley. You already mentioned him, Johan Berg Goodmunson. To be fair, I also mentioned him last week, even before the Robbie Brady injury. The Robbie Brady injury just brings him even further to the fore. He ended up with 9 crosses last week. Large reason for that being that he's going to be taking over the set piece duties for Burnley, which obviously gives you a great boost of value because crosses are counting stats. They are point earning stats. So you have to like that about him. He, like I said, ended up with 9 crosses last week. That should be his role now. He scored double digits in 4 of the last 5 matches and comes up against Watford this week, who have the 4th worst defense in the Premier League. I know that people don't look at Burnley as a great attacking team. I think they're 12th in goals scored this season, but they are very good at scoring 1 goal in matches. And if it happens, I think Goodmunson, especially with Brady out, is more likely to be involved. A player I do not like this week from this matchup is going to be Richarlison, who I love. That is not new news on this podcast. 2 weeks ago, we were talking about how he was worth being in the 10s, and now he's down at 93. But he was worth that when he was getting 20-plus points a game, which has not been the case. 2 single-digit outings his last 2 matches, and the switch to forward, I think, really limits his usability. Like, obviously, you have the util slot if you want, but I think that's why his price is as high as it is, because they're not comparing him to midfielders. They're comparing him to forwards. And as barren as this slate is in big names, I think it's one of the reasons he's still up there in price, despite having not really performed well recently. There's every chance he goes out and scores against Burnley, but Burnley's defense kind of are like their attack. They're very good at keeping you to only 1. Whether or not they keep the clean sheet, a little more up in the air. But they are pretty tight at the back. So I'm not a huge fan of Richarlison this week. I think this one ends up being a really disappointing 1-1, which basically just kills the value of any defenders in this matchup.
Yeah, I like this. This is probably like the 3rd best game on the slate behind Leicester and Tottenham.
Yeah, I mean, Watford and Burnley are both in the top 10.
Yeah, absolutely. They're it's like 2 rams that don't have horns yet, basically slapping heads. I think it's funny that you mentioned Richarlison. His price $9,300. 2 weeks ago he was $10,100. Then 2 weeks before that he was $7,900. And then a week in between the weeks he was basically $8,400 and $9,100. So basically he's fluctuating based on what the slate is telling you. Yeah. And on this slate he's basically one of the better options. But unfortunately Are you really going to trust Richarlison based on the last two game returns? I believe it's 8 and 5 after two 20 game returns.
Yeah.
You're probably not going to, because there's not a lot of money to splash around on this slate. So you're probably getting a lot of mediocre guys, basically from 7,000 to 4,500, and then basically splurging on Spurs. So from that standpoint, look at the price difference between Richarlison and the second priced Watford player, which is Jose Holebas at 5,900. That's 3,400 difference in price just on one team. And that's basically not good, because that's a saying that Watford either is or isn't Richarlison.
Yeah, and Holebas has recently been missing out on a spot to Ziegler. So
yeah, absolutely. He hasn't played in 3 games. So I mean, there's that. Score wise, I think you nailed it right on. This game could be 2-2, 1-1, or 1-0. But I think 1-1 is a good medium ground. You don't want to predict too many goals in a game like this, because then you'll shoot your load on Watford, and who wants to do that?
Yeah, it should be a really fun watch. If you're more than just a fantasy watcher, if you're somebody that actually likes the sport, this will be a really interesting matchup between Marco Silva's attacking tactics and Sean Dyche's defensive tactics. It should be a really interesting watch. Bournemouth versus Crystal Palace is an interesting one. Bournemouth's defense started really horribly. They've actually been much better of late. Also tend to concede just 1 goal a match. Versus Crystal Palace, who have the worst attack in the Premier League still. Which side are you leaning here?
Yeah, like I just said about Watford-Burnley, there's so many different outcomes that this could happen. It could be 0-0, it could be 2-2, it could be 3-3. Both these teams could just forget about defense and just play offense. And both teams are capable of it, even given Crystal Palace's propensity to not score goals this year and where they stand in the goal-scoring ranks. The guy I like this week is their clean sheet good luck charm. It's Mamadou Sakho at 3,400. He is not the offensive juggernaut that you want producing from a defensive standpoint. But if you're looking and believe in his being there, making Crystal Palace a better defensive team, you're absolutely right, because he does. His last 3 games, 5, 5, and 14 in returns, are not awesome by any stretch of the imagination. But look at what you're paying for him. You're paying 3,000 less than a Spurs defender who are going to be rotated, who may
and
be
won't keep
involved
clean
or may
sheets.
not. Absolutely. So, I mean, Mamadou Sakho is basically the poor man's awesomeness this week, but I still love him. Keep an eye also on Christian Benteke, priced at 6,000.
Yeah.
He falls into that 7,000 to 5,000 range that basically everybody and their brother on this slate falls into. Had a decent return, 8 points last week in his first full 90 where he did something. It was his second full 90 overall, but he had 4 shots on goal. I think he's coming around. He's lying in the weeds, but given his price at 6,000 and the other names that are on this slate, sleeper, striker-wise, I think that he could be a good own. Guy I don't like this week, Callum Wilson. Callum Wilson is my Admiral Akbar, go back, it's a trap of the week. His price is so similar to what Benteke is, and I'd rather own Benteke 4 times out of 5. Since his triple, Kevin, he's only had 5 shots on goal in basically 190 minutes. Callum Wilson is a fraud for fantasy. He's a fraud for DFS. Just avoid. I'm going with a 0-0 game here.
It could be 0-0. I do think it'll be 1-0 either way. Could not tell you which. My hunch would probably be for Bournemouth, just because they have so many people that can score goals. If it's Crystal Palace, 2 people are scoring goals. It's going to be Zaha or Benteke, pretty much across the board. Although worth noting, as we've mentioned before this week, Kabay and Townsend both pretty high up on the crossing ranks. In theory, should help Benteke. Do think it's a good point that at 6,000 he is a bit of a steal this week. I'll go 1-0 Bournemouth. It could go the other way. And this could be a crazy 3-3 as well, but I just really it's a tough game to read. But I'll say I think Bournemouth win. Moving on to Brighton versus Huddersfield in one of the first promoted versus promoted matches of the season. Although I think Newcastle played Huddersfield already this season.
I think they did, yeah.
But hasn't happened too much yet. In this one, I'm going to be a pretty big fan of scrolling Glenn Murray, actually, who last week I said I hated. And the reason why is because you know what he is, right? He's a price dump, pretty decent upside. But what I like about him is that unlike Defoe, you remember, Rob, last year when Defoe would score, he'd still only get 12 points?
Yeah.
He'd just be like,
he's useless.
What's the point of that? At least when Murray scores, he gets up in the teens. His lowest point tally when scoring goals is 15. He averages 18, which you definitely like. And then you have him going up against a Huddersfield team that started the season well defensively, but I think people just found them out. I think they're relegation fodder at this point. They've conceded 2 or more goals in 4 of their last 5 matches. Things just falling apart at the seams for them now. I don't think the midfield is strong enough to protect their back line. Like, they have Zonka at the back. They have Lowe at the back that's also very good, but not good enough for the Premier League, I fear. I think Zonka is actually Premier League quality. Yeah, I think if they got relegated, he'd stay up, but he's not good enough to play all 4 defensive positions for them and protect the back line. So I think we could see a fairly big day from Brighton, which may be surprising to people that are about to hear that my dislike is actually going to be Pascal Gross, who, like Richarlison, I love a lot. I actually own both of them in season-long formats, but I don't like this ticket price. Him and Richarlison have both crawled up too much. Gross at 7,600 is not something you want to be a fan of. He's only managed double digits twice in the last 5 matches. And in those matches, he's only created 3 chances. In 2 of them, he created 0 chances of those matches where he scored double digits. He can obviously pop up with an assist. We know creativity's there. I wonder if there's some issue game flow wise where he's not like seeing the runs that he needs to create those chances, or and I haven't seen enough of them recently, honestly, to know if maybe he's sitting further back or just pulling him further away to create those chances. But you don't like the trend of those creative stats. He could get an assist, but when he does, it might be low teens like we were just talking about on the Glenn Murray side. I just don't think 7,600 is worth 1 speculative assist. So even though I like him as a player, I'm kind of off him this week in DFS. I do think these are 2 teams trending very different ways, though. Brighton looking like they're going to be stable, probably make it to next season. Huddersfield very much looking like they're going to miss staying in the Premier League next season. I'm going to say Brighton win 2-0.
Yeah, this game is, like you said, a tale of teams passing each other in the night.
Yeah.
The thing on Pascal Gross is they've been taken so out of their game flow lately that they've been like playing so defensively that he hasn't actually had enough flow to move forward with the offense. Because if you notice, I think 3 of their last 5 goals have come on penalties, and it's all been Glenn Murray. So from that standpoint, he hasn't really been involved too much in a build-up or crosses or interceptions, because on the offensive end, I'm saying, because he hasn't been in the game flow for Brighton. Score-wise, Brighton's going to take this, but I don't think they score an abundance of goals. I think it's going to be a 1-0, maybe 2, possibly 0 game. But this is not one of those fixtures where you're stacking your lineup with, especially. Yeah.
Also, Aaron Moyes' price is annoying because with how many crosses he puts in, he should be a value play, but he's at 7,100. Like, he should be a 5,500 guy at most.
Well, it's just based on the names on the slate. That's all. There's just no quality names that are on the slate. You don't have a second big 6 team. There's no Arsenal. There's no Liverpool. There's no United. There's no City. So it's basically he's taking all the players that are medium value, making them high medium value, and all the high guys are super high, like Kane, Eriksen, Ali. So it's the slate is definitely skewed. But it's bad in different situations, which we're going to talk about as soon as we start talking about Swansea and West Brom. Yeah,
which we can just jump into now. We've talked earlier this week. I actually really like the direction of West Brom under Alan Pardew. I think they're some very noted beneficiaries like Solomon Rondon. Unfortunately, it looks like Matty Phillips is still going to miss this one. But who are you liking?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm just going to read down the list of players, and everybody can do this at home if you have the DraftKings site up and you click on just this team. Mm-hmm. Stop me when you get to a name that you trust here. Matty Phillips, Jay Rodriguez, Hal Robinson-Cano, Chris Brunt hasn't played in a month and a half. Tammy Abraham hasn't scored for 3 weeks now?
Yeah.
4
well,
weeks?
He was hurt for 2, but yeah.
Nasser Chadley, he's
hurt.
out. Jordan Ayew is in rotation. Wilfred Boney just scored his first goal, can't go 90 minutes. I skipped over the one because he's in my team, and it's Solomon Rondon, and that's my
there
line.
It is
5,800.
Yep.
Listen, this is a buyer's market for cheap strikers on the pitch. Look at the second best striker on the whole slate is Jamie Vardy, and look at his price.
Yeah.
It's
but
pretty
is it like 6,600 or something?
I didn't have it there. I'll bring it up right now. It's 6,600.
Yeah.
So I mean, so basically, if Kane is number 1 at 12,000. Or whatever he is, and then you jump down to Jamie Vardy is 6,600. Then you go into Benteke, Rondon, Glenn Murray, and then you're basically out of options after that because you're not trusting many others.
Yeah.
Maybe Heung-min Son because he qualifies at forward.
Mm-hmm.
Richarlison, I'm skipping over it because I don't believe in the price at 9,300. But Rondon is doing okay. He's playing in a new Baggies offense where it's kind of unleashing him into the wild. He was like a kept animal under Tony Pulis, and now he's being released into the wild, so he's learning how to feed, learning how to get that offensive stroke back underneath him. Players I don't like in this game, everybody not named Solomon Rondon. I just went down the list of players that are intriguing based on top value to zero value, and basically there's nothing between 6,400 and how about Wayne Rutledge at 4,000? No, you don't want to do that. I'm being sarcastic. There's nothing there. This is the last two games that me and Kevin just talked about: Brighton, Huddersfield, and West Brom and Swansea. These are selective games. Pick one player. Pick Rondon. Pick a defender.
Niam or Gibbs would probably be fine.
Maybe you trust Fabianski. Maybe you trust Lawsell. One of those. Maybe Matthew Ryan turns the shrew for you. It's one of those games where you're picking one option and one option only. Yeah. Don't go crazy and invest. I mean, you're not really investing a lot anyway because the highest priced guy in this slate is 6,400. So don't go crazy. Score wise, I think West Brom score. I don't think Swansea can score. I think it's 1-0 West Brom.
I agree, and I think Swansea are unfortunately heading down to the Championship. They've just shown nothing this season, and Renato Sanchez is one of the biggest disappointments we've seen in the Premier League in recent memory. On to Tottenham versus Stoke. The like is obviously Harry Kane. We just talked about it. There aren't any other players anywhere near his caliber. It's very chalk, but it should be. But I'm sure, Rob, you've seen this. There are some people in the industry that are like off Kane right now. I have no idea what they're on. Tottenham have had some of the worst performances they've had under Pochettino this last month, and Kane still scored goals in 2 of the last 3. Like, there does not have to be much for Kane to get his chance. Part of that, because he still leads the league in shots by 26 shots. Like, the rest is like 53, 51. He's in the 80s. Like, It is incredible what Harry Kane is doing this year shot-wise. And again, a counting stat here in DraftKings. In other formats, you wish like the shots on target to shots ratio was a little closer. But in this one, you take those shots because you get points every time. He's also second in goals this season, despite the fact that he doesn't play in August, and Tottenham have been rather fallow in attack of late. Like, he is still a very, very good option. He's facing a Stoke defense. You may have seen this stat as well, but I'll throw it to you. What do you think Stoke are averaging in terms of away goals allowed this season?
Away goals allowed
per game.
I know they're probably. Are they bad? They're bad, right? Yeah. It's probably like 2.5 goals per game.
It's 3 even.
Yeah.
They've conceded 15 and 5.
Well, they gave up 5 to Chelsea and 4 to United.
Yeah.
Or 2 to United. So I mean, there's 6 right there. There's your average.
Yep. That multiples to City as well, which I think was a big loss.
Well, everybody's giving up multiples to City.
That's true. But yeah, so why you would be off Kane in a week where they're playing a team with such a horrible away defense, I do not know. Also, their best, in so many air quotes, winger, Eric Peters, this week has openly been talking about how he wants to leave. And the Stoke fans are like, good, because that's how bad Eric Peters has been this year. And he's still better than their options on the right. So Tottenham could very easily have a field day. But this may surprise. My dislike is almost everyone else in this matchup. Like, I realize that if there are going to be a lot of goals for Tottenham, other people are going to be involved. But how do you trust Dele Alli right now? How do you trust Christian Eriksen right now? I know in this format, at least because he's taking corners, you're getting crosses, which at least raises the floor somewhat. But I do not like many of the other people in this matchup. I think Trippier and Shaqiri are ownable. You already mentioned, if Son gets the start, he'd be very interesting. He's in very good form right now, even when he's coming off the bench, kind of like Gabriel Jesus. Even as a sub, he's still doing things. Lamella is like a pot shot option, but he's already at 8,200, despite the fact that he's played a grand total of like 20 minutes. Since coming back from injury that he missed for a year with. So yeah, even though it's a lot of high profile guys and their prices obviously reflect that, I'm mainly going Kane and looking at other matches to fill the rest of my lineup, to be honest.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's Harry Kane on this slate, and he's probably going to be the most universally owned, even at the $12,400 price tag. He's $2,100 more expensive than the next highest priced player, which is Christian Eriksen.
Yeah, and you don't need the money for elsewhere.
You don't. Like I've been saying this whole pod, like this whole TV or whatever we're doing right now, that you're watching a live stream.
The show thing, right?
There are so many options between 7,000 and 5,000 that you could go with. You could basically line up your team with 4 or 5 strikers between the forward spots, the guys that qualify at midfield, and the utility spot. And that'd be perfectly fine with me, because the way the slate is lining up, you're basically looking at teams that are only going to score 1, possibly 2 goals, and those teams don't even have an out-and-out striker that normally scores. So you're basically playing the odds that the striker that you're picking is going to do well. So from that standpoint, that's why I love Benteke this week. I love Salomon Rondon, and Harry Kane is an obvious choice this week because of name value, because of Stoke's propensity to give up goals, and people are sleeping on Harry Kane. They think they see a lot of people who play DFS also play official game, and they realize that he's blanked in every game except for 6 games because he scores in multiples and all that good stuff. But it's still Harry Kane. He's still playing Stoke. Stoke are awful. They're god awful.
Yeah. Also, I just realized this, and I should have written this in previews this week. If memory serves, Tottenham have beaten Stoke exactly 4-0 their last 3 matches.
I don't doubt it. They're probably going to beat them 4-0 again.
Yeah. But anyway, we both like Kane. Tottenham are going to win this by multiples. It's going to be a wash. But just because that's going to happen doesn't mean I'm a huge fan of the other guys. Because value-wise, as you said, there's a lot of other options out there. You'll wrap here with the matchups here with Leicester versus Newcastle. Newcastle seem to be very blah. They'll probably be safe. They'll probably be that boring 12th to 16th team all season. Just not really much of note. Leicester, on the other hand, have looked much better under Claude Puel. Very interested to hear your take on this, especially with somebody like Vardy, who we mentioned earlier, how at least Glenn Murray does stuff even when he's not scoring goals. Vardy does not do stuff when he's not scoring goals.
He runs a lot. That's what he does. He runs into space and hopes that he gets on the end of a pass. But the passes are coming from the guy I love this week, and it's Riyad Mahrez. Riyad Mahrez at 7,300 is the elite bargain play of the week.
Agreed.
And he's $700 more than Jamie Vardy, with good reason, because he actually does crosses. He does everything else intrinsically valuable for DFS that you want in your basically. He's going to be your second highest priced player this week, most likely, because basically you're picking Harry Kane and you're skipping a whole bunch of names. You could basically look at the list and skip from Christian Eriksen to maybe below Pascal Gross at 7,600. And that's like 15 names that you can completely skip over and build a great roster, which I'm going to tell you about in a second because I did it. So from that standpoint, I love Riyad Mahrez this week, 7,300. Just look what he's going to do. My hate this week is Matt Ritchie. Why is Matt Ritchie 7,900?
I don't know.
I don't understand this. And this is going to get into my whole point about prices this week, especially on the defensive end, because it made me sit back and realize the pricing that DraftKings is coming up with. You know, I don't make the prices. You know, the prices are done by an independent source. They base them on the game types, who's on the slate, and effectiveness, how people are informed.
Which, by the way, hire us to do that, please.
Yeah, like seriously. Like, look at the prices of some of the defenders. Just the defenders, Kevin. If you could bring that screen up for everybody.
Yeah.
You have the four Spurs defenders: Trippier, Danny Rose, Davis, and Aurier. Only 2 of those are going to play.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, then skip that.
Then Holobos, who isn't starting,
hasn't played in a month.
Yep.
Jesus Gamez has
not
2
consistently
games
starting
this whole year, and he's 5,400. Charlie Daniels, they've kept what 2 clean sheets all year, Bournemouth, and he's basically had double figures in 3 games. Patrick Van Aanholt
hasn't been good since he left Sunderland.
Completely oblivious.
Yep.
Martin Olsen plays for one of the worst defensive teams in the Premier League and does nothing on the offensive end. He's got 1 goal, and he's got 14 shots on goal 14 shots in what week are we? 16. That's awful. You know, and then just go down the list. It's I mean, I know it's based on the slate. Then you have guys I haven't even heard of. Elise Mateu at 4,600. He's never even played yet. He's 4,600. Yeah. I'm getting all heated. See, I told you I was going to get heated towards the end.
Yep, you have Walker Peters, who only started once this season.
Yeah, I mean,
Then your boy Kiko. Why isn't your boy Kiko at like 5K?
To be honest, I'd take Kiko over any Spurs defender on this whole slate.
Ooh, that's a take. I'd probably still take Trippier, but it's a decent point. Who do you think wins this one?
It's a Leicester game. I think Vardy gets a goal. I think Mahrez gets maybe a goal or an assist. And this is a game where you could probably invest in a Leicester defender or a keeper. You know, I love Kasper Schmeichel's price this week at 4,300. Yeah. Newcastle just doesn't do enough offensively. Joselu is just falling off the map. He looks like that mountain climber from Price is Right that went yo and fell. Yeah. And but yeah, score wise, 2-0.
Yeah, I think it's 2-0. If Jamal Lascelles doesn't start, he has a fitness test coming up. It could be more than that. He is definitely the anchor of that defense, and they have missed him sorely. You mentioned your team and how you fit all those sub 7,000 guys in there, so let's hear it.
Yeah, so I'll start at forwards. I have Benteke and Rondon. Obvious. I mentioned them ad nauseum before, so you could just load up your lineup with strikers who are on the come up. Midfield, Riyad Mahrez, I just talked about him, and Kevin's pick, Johan Berg Goodmunson at 6,500. I think he's going to be the beneficiary of Robbie Bradley being out. He's probably going to take a lot of the set pieces, corners, on one side of the field at least.
Yep.
So there's that. On defense, the good luck charm for Crystal Palace, Mamadou Sakho, 3,400. I went with Christian Kabasele for Watford because he's one of the cheapest entry points there, and he does get forward. He is valuable on set pieces. I have Schmeichel in goal, and I have the $12,000 man, Harry Kane.
There you go. Coming over to mine, Harry Kane up front with Glenn Murray. I already talked about both of them. Riyad Mahrez, who I thought was a great shout on your part. Easily the second best player on the slate. It's incredible that he isn't in the nines this week based on the players that are. Paired with Goodmunson, who I also already talked about. Then in defense, like I said when you're talking about West Brom, I do like their defense this week. I like Kieran Gibbs. I like what he does both in attack and defensively. I think they have a decent shot of a clean sheet against Swansea, who have been horrible in attack this season. Also, just a quick correction. When I say Crystal Palace are the worst attack in the Premier League, apparently that is now Swansea with only 18 goals out of what you mentioned before, 16 matches. Not exactly something that you like. Have paired Gibbs with Harry Maguire at the back. He's constantly a goal threat, not really scared of Newcastle. You already mentioned Joselu's been struggling. Dwight Gale is kind of a wing forward, kind of weird hybrid, but he's only
100. He's 150 years old.
He does. I have weirdly not paired a goalkeeper with a defender, but I do have Aurelio Gomez in defense. He's at 4,400, which even though I like Goodmunson, a lot of that is those crossing points. I'm not exactly scared of Burnley's attack. So Gomez in there, and then my util is Solomon Rondon, who we also discussed as a really interesting option for that West Brom slate. A bargain at 5,800. Rob, this is a weird, wackadoo, crazy slate this week. What are we looking at points-wise?
It's going to be low because there's not too many goals. Basically, this slate has every bottom 8 scoring team on one slate, and there's no other high scoring teams besides Tottenham. And I don't even think Tottenham go crazy.
Tottenham are like 8th right now in goals.
I mean, they might get 3, but other than that, I don't expect more than 3 goals from any fixture in this whole slate. I'm going to guess this game just breaks 100.
Yeah. Tottenham are 7th, in attack right now. The point is, they're not as good as they were last year when they had the best attack and the best defense. Agree with you, but I do not think it breaks 100. I think it's right on that line. It's not good.
Challenge. 6-pack challenge.
I owe you so many 6-packs. But sure, it's on recording. We're on the record with that. Rob, tell the folks so they can get at you.
You can find me on Twitter at FPL_MNOP, or you can find my writings and stylings on Razzball.com.
Yep, I'm your other host, Kevin DeVries. If you'd like to see my writings instead of my face, you can go to goal.com. Be sure to click on the gaming tab to find all my fantasy stuff over there. Rob, pleasure speaking with you as always. Folks at home, best of luck to your teams, and we'll catch you next.